Hello, this is Unit 1 study guide for slope, midpoint, distance formula, and Pythagorean theorem, geometry. Unit 1 for us. And I'm just going to be going through this study guide. This can act as an answer key, but with me explaining what's going on and showing my work. So hopefully you find this pretty helpful. So first of all, it says slope formula, and here it is asking you just to write down the slope formula. So either you've memorized it or you haven't. The slope formula, we use the letter M for slope. And if you remember slope, the definition is rise over run. So the slope formula is going to show that, a rise over run. And if you remember, rise is how much you are going up and down, and run is how much you are going left and right. Up and down is on the y-axis, and left-right is on the x-axis. So when we do this formula, maybe that's a way you can remember if the y is on top or if the x is on top. That rise is up and down is the y-axis. So it starts with a y2 minus y1 on top, and then on bottom, x2 minus x1. So you subtract the y values, you subtract the x values. And that is the rise, the y's, and the runs, the x's. That's the slope formula. Okay, so it says to find the slope of the line show for each graph below. As you can see, there are 3 problems where you're given a graph and 3 problems where you're given 2 points. Technically, if you had these, you could just write out the ordered pairs. Like this is -2, +3. And this is -1, -2. So if you really felt like it, you could write down the ordered pairs and then use the slope formula. You'd get the same answer as doing rise over run. You could do that for all 3 here. Technically, if you really felt like it, you could take one that was an ordered pair and you could plot the points. And kind of get a slope right there and count the up and over in order to find the slope there. So this you would probably want to do in Desmos, the computer program. If you plot those 2 points, then you can count the ups and overs to see what the slope is. But you can always take one and put it to look like the other and then solve it that way. But, you know, I'm going to do it both ways because that's what it looks like. So I'll zoom in. And I will start counting. So first, if I start at this point, we always want to go from the left to the right. So go here, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a -5. Because it's going down, it's going to be a negative. And then it goes over 1, like so. So the rise is actually a negative because it was going down, and it's over 1. Please make sure you are simplifying fractions. Do not leave it as -5/1. The answer is just -5. It's not considered simplified unless you actually divide it by 1, in which case you get the same number. For this one, it is a horizontal line. If you felt like doing rise over run, you could. It's just you're rising 0 when you're going over some amount, whatever, and you get 0. Or you can memorize that a horizontal line has 0 slope. So either one. You can write the number 0 or spell out 0. But horizontal is that. Just as a note, vertical is if you had something like 5/0. If 0 is on the bottom, then it's undefined. So if you see a vertical line, then it would be undefined. But because this is horizontal, it's going to be 0. And lastly, I'll count it goes up. So this is a positive slope because it's going up. Go up 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3. So it goes up 2 and over 3. So positive 2/3. It's always good to double check. This is positive, so this is positive. This one was negative, so my answer was negative. It's going downhill. So That is the first three problems. For the next one, using the actual slope formula, the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's going to be a fraction with minus signs in it. And we're going to have, this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 is -7, and y1 is -1. X2 is -4, and x1 is -2. So you end up with that. Notice that I put the negative signs in there first because sometimes people will copy the wrong number down. They'll say like, well, this is a -1. They'll put -1, but they won't put the -1. So maybe it's good to put it there first. I don't know, but depending on who you are, do make sure that if it's a negative, you are bringing down the second negative. Because when you have minus a negative, it becomes a plus. So a -7 plus 1 is -6. And a -4 plus 2 is a -2. And then that simplifies. A negative over negative turns positive. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the answer is +3. In the next one, x1, y1, x2, y2. We have the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And here we go again. It's going to be something minus something over something minus something. So y2 is -13. y1 is -3. x2 is 6. x1 is 2. Plug them in. Similar thing's going to happen here. The minus and negative turns into a plus. So -13 plus 3 is -10. And then 6 minus 2 is 4. Once again, this does simplify, so make sure you are simplifying. They're both divisible by 2. So the final answer would be -5/2. If you haven't already, try number 6. Pause the video, try number 6, and then come back and see how you did. Okay. So you should end up with -8 minus 4 over -3 minus -3. So -8 minus 4 is -12. And -3 minus -3, that's like a plus, so you'd get 0. Since you cannot divide by 0, the answer is undefined. Which I mentioned up here, right? If it's over 0, then it's undefined. This one was -12 over 0, so it's undefined. Okay. Midpoint, and then I'll put the other side of the study guide in a second video. Find the midpoint using the formula. Yeah, let's just do red. The midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. Basically, you're averaging the numbers. Because if you have two numbers and you're trying to find the middle, you would just average the two numbers. And averaging the two numbers will find the middle number. So that's midpoint. Find the midpoint between each of these. So I'm going to take the two x values and add them together and divide by 2. And I'm going to take the two y values, -5 and 9, and divide them by 2 to average them. So -1 plus -5 is -6 over 2. And negative 5 plus 9 is 4 over 2. So then if you simplify it, negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. There you go. So, if that's too fast, just go back and rewatch it. I'm going at a brisk pace because this is a video and you can pause and things. For this one, 7 and a negative 4 over 2. 2 and negative 2 over 2. In this one, I did that one and then that one. It doesn't matter. When you're adding numbers, it doesn't matter which one's first. So if you're wondering why I did that, it can be either way. Either way, 7 plus negative 4 is 3. So you end up with 3 over 2. And then 2 minus 2 is 0. So you end up with 0 over 2, but that's just 0. Lastly, it's the weird ones. I'll draw a picture. It says if m is the midpoint of xy, find the coordinates of y. So we're looking for this. If m is negative 3, negative 1, and x is negative 8, 6. Like that. So we're looking for this. Now, normally in the formula, you have two parts, right? So we need to find the x part and the y part for this problem. All right, so here's the x part. So let's find the x part first. Now, according to this formula, the midpoint is at x1 plus x2 over 2, right? That's like, if you just cover this up, if we're just finding the x, this is the x part of the formula. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. Okay, so the midpoint is x1 plus x2 over 2. Keep in mind that according to our figure, this is x1, y1. This is the midpoint, and this is your x2, y2 over there. So when we use this formula, notice that we are given the midpoint this time. We don't have x1 and x2, right? X2 is the blank one. So when we plug this in, if we are talking literally about x, then what's the x value at m, the midpoint? The x value is negative 3. So we would say negative 3 is equal to. And then the formula says x1, so x1 is negative 8, plus x2, which we don't know. We don't know x2, so it's going to stay in x2. And then that's over 2. Then you would solve for x2. So multiply both sides by 2. And then you would add 8 to both sides. So x2 is equal to 2. And we'll do something similar for y. The midpoint of the y is going to be equal to y1 plus y2 over 2. So if you want to pause and try, you can. If not, what's the mid y? The mid y value, here's the middle, the y value is negative 1. y1 is right here. It's 6. y2 is our unknown over 2. Once again, I'd recommend pausing, see if you can finish it from there. Times 2. You end up with negative 2 equals 6 plus y2, y sub 2. And then subtract 6 from both sides and you get negative 8. As I run out of space. So the midpoint's going to be at 2, negative 8. All right, so that is the math way to do it. If you don't like the math way to do it, you can always do what I sometimes do. If you're more of a visual person, if you can kind of conceive of patterns, then you can do it this way. Like if I was to cover this up and just do it another way, then you could say, well, with my x's, there has to be a pattern with the slope. So like if you start at negative 8 and you go to negative 3, how much did you add or subtract? From negative 8 to negative 3. Well, you had to add 5. Negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. Which means if you're adding 5 to get here, you're going to have to add 5 to get here. So negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. This is 6. 6 going to negative 1. So what do you have to add or subtract to get to negative 1? Well, 6 minus 7 is negative 1. So if 6 minus 7 is negative 1, minus 7 again would get you negative 8. And sure enough, that's what we already got. It's just, that's a pattern way of doing it. You can count to see how much you have to go to get to the next one. And I'll start out with that one on this next one. If M is the midpoint of AC, find the coordinates of X. Okay, I'm guessing that's supposed to be a B. If midpoint is at 9, negative 3, and A is at 3, 12. So just to show you, like, if that made sense to you, it is so much faster. So from 3 to 9. To get from 3 to 9, you would have to add 6. So 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 plus 6 is 15. 12 to get to negative 3. That's going to be minus 12 to get to 0, minus 3 to get to 3. So that's minus 15. So you would minus 15 for the y's. So 12 minus 15 is negative 3. Minus the 15 again gives you negative 18. So that right there is the answer. All right, I didn't have to do all this stuff. You could, if you wanted to. If you want to, then go ahead, try it. I'm about to do it. The math behind it for my x's. So I'll just do my x over here and my y's over there. But for the x's, the midpoint is 9 equals the first x, which is 3, plus x1 over 2. And for my y values, the midpoint was at negative 3, and the endpoint was at 12. So in both cases, you multiply by 2. Multiply by 2. Oops, that's an equals. And then here you would subtract 12 to get negative 18. Here you would subtract 3 to get 15. So x is 15 and y is negative 18. So I got the same answer. Okay, so this is about 20 minutes long. I'm going to stop here because, that's a lot to take in. Okay, see you in a second or 20.